Shulam Aleichem, everybody. Today is Daf Gimel and Zvachim. We start from Daf Beis Amid Beis, 6 lines, 7 lines from the bottom. Okay, we saw yesterday that Rava asked the contradiction between Karbonas and Get. Karbonas Stama is like Lishma, and by Get, Stama is not Lishma. And he answered, and the reason is because by Karbonas, Stam karbonas l'shman oimdim, and stam isha lav legerish oimedes. That was his basic premise. But that premise was based on a question, an assumption that get stam is puzzle and by karbonas it's kosher. So yesterday we saw the Makar, how Rava knows that by Karbonas, Tam is kosher. He brought a Mishnah later on Memvav, which clearly states that Stam is okay. Rabbi Yoel says, even if he didn't have any of the Kavanas, Tnai Bezdin, okay. Now, the Gemara said, Agabe get, the Stam Apostle Minolan. How do we know, where did Rava get from that by Gerishin, it's Stama is puzzle. Person passes by in the marketplace. And he overhears, scribes are calling out, announcing to their Talmidim, Ish Ploini Girish Ploinis Mimakan Ploini. This person, Shimon, divorces Leah from Fondulac, Wisconsin. And this guy walks past the marketplace. And he says, Gewalt, Hashgacha Pratis. I'm thinking of divorcing my wife. Had an argument with her last night. You know, I had enough. I've been married for 3 months. I had enough. Remember Shana Rishana? Then you learn that this is the way. You know, you gotta stick it out. It gets easier, hopefully. So the guy walks past the marketplace and he hears his name and her name being announced from the very same city that he's from. And he says, Gewaldig. Zeshmi v'zeshemishti. Posel legarish boy. He cannot be megarish with that get. That was written bistama. So still, it's not okay. Still, it's not okay. What do you mean that was written bistama, right? This is a little bit interesting because that wasn't written bistama. Over there, you had a specific name. You had a specific name. Yeah. But either way, the Gemara is assuming that the Mishnah there is a case of stama. Yeah. Says the Gemara, Don't look at the Rav Papa. Rav Papa, these Seifrim are teaching others to write Gittin, yeah? And v'leichtel l'shem krisis klal. So b'chnal no krisis, it wasn't l'shem gerishin at all. It was dafka l'shem limud. They were going to throw it out afterwards. It wasn't going to be used l'shem krisis at all. It wasn't written l'shem krisis. And therefore that's worse than stama. Really, I'll tell you, stama works.
Were just
Examples. Really, stama works.
Coincident that they had the name.
Correct.
But the Sofer himself did not have no shava for that.
Exactly. So the Gemara says, Elamaha. So I'll bring you another Mekar from a different part of that Mishnah. Yesser al-Kain. The Mishnah continues there in Gittin. Person wrote a get to his wife, and then he had charata, he had second thoughts. So another guy found him, and he says, our names match. Pasal garish boy cannot be megarish with it. Even though, when that guy wrote it, he wrote it bistama. Now, this is also a very difficult assumption. Why would the Gemara assume that case is stama? The answer is because he didn't make up his mind completely, right? It was nimlach. Yeah, he still left it open to be chayzer. And because he left it open to be chayzer, the Gemara assumes that that's similar to stama, and if it doesn't work there, it doesn't work by stama either. So perhaps that's Rava's makar. Says the Gemara, no, dil mashani yosam the integral l'shem gerishin dahu. Maybe over there, it was designated for his gerishin. Yeah, whether he's going to follow through with it or not, that's a conversation to be had. But he did write it for his marriage in case he wants to go through with it. So intikle l'shem gerishim, which means that he was manatikit, he was oikered, he uprooted this get from being used by other people. So that's not stama. That's worse than stama. So maybe you don't have a right that stama is puzzle. That's worse. So the Gemara elamaha. So maybe from the third bava of the Mishnah, Yeser al kain yesh l'shtei nashim shmeisein shavos. Person has two wives. Imagine having two wives, huh? Shmeisein shavos, same names. Kaser legarish sagdoila, legarish b'saktana. Used to be. Now we can barely handle one. No. Okay.
And
what?
The guy with the older wife and the younger wife.
Yeah.
The older wife wanted to take out his black hairs. The younger wife wanted to take out his white hairs.
He's left with
So,
nothing.
you know, it's one of the famous laws.
Aha.
That's why
למה אדם לא יתחתן עם מבוגרת וצעירה? למה יעשו אותו קרח מפה וקרח מפה?
בטח, בטח. Yeah. So Elma Yesel Ken Yesh L'Shtei Nashim V'Sein Shavos Kaser L'Garish Sagdoila. First he decided he's going to divorce the older one. L'Garish B'Saktana. Then he wanted to change his mind. Can't be Megarish the Ktana. Here again, Gemara assumes, very difficult Gemaras. The Gemara assumes this is similar to Stama. Why is it similar to Stama? He wrote it L'Shem Ishtoi HaGedoila. Yeah? So L'Garish Boy Saktana. Even though this get was nichtav l'shma, he kept. Why would the Gemara assume this is nichtav l'shma? Okay, very shver Gemara. Not exactly sure why, but the Gemara for some reason assumes, yeah, that this is a case of ksiva saget b'stama, even though he wrote it l'shem ishtoi hagdoila. Okay, the Sfasema says a pshat over here. Yeah.
maybe it's similar to Marcos, but Marcos we talked about curve, the Mesa curve is shogeg.
Yeah.
It's not exactly shogeg, it's not exactly Mesa.
Somewhere in between.
It's somewhere in between.
Yeah.
It's a gray zone.
It's a gray zone, a gray area. Okay. So the Gemara says maybe from over there you see stam as puzzle. Somewhere says no dilma shani hasam, the intikla l'shem gershon dahi. Again, you know, he had in mind to write it for his older wife, the wife who's older, and once he had in mind to give it to the wife who's older, he uprooted the possibility of this get being given to another woman, and that's why it's worse than stama. Okay, elamaha. So finally, Gemara has from the very, very end of that Mishnah, yeah, by the Sefer it says, Yeser al Kain, bigger Chiddush. Amr lalav lo says to the Sefer, K'soiv leizer she'irtza agarish, go write it to whoever I want to divorce later, that's who I'll use it for, Pasal agarish by. Then he's not allowed to be megarish for that get. Why? Because B'shas Ksiva, he had no idea who's going to be megarish. So that has to come on to what we know is Breira. At the end, he's going to decide to give it to one of his wives. Now it's Huvra Radover Lamafreya, the B'shaz Ksivis Aged. That's who I wanted to give it to. So the Gemara says, but up until that point, it's Stama. We don't know. So you see that Stama does not work. Says the Gemara, no, Stama maybe works, but Dilma Shani Osam to Aim Breira. So you'll have to come onto Breira. So if you have to come onto Breira, that's a whole new parsha. So maybe the reason why it doesn't work is because Aim Breira, but really, I'll tell you, Stama works, and Rava wouldn't have a riot from this halacha that Stama doesn't work by Gerushin. So what's Rava's Mekar that Stama does not work by Gerushin? Elamaha. Finally, the Gemara brings the Mishnah over there in Chavav and Gittin, Akoisav Toifse Gittin. Person who writes the Toifus, right? The Toifus is the fine print, and the Toirif is the actual star where it says the names, Aret Materis L'Chaladam. Right. But he leaves out the Toirif, which is the most important part of the get. So Akoisav Toifse Gittin, Sorich Shianiach, Chavadi has to leave out empty space to write in later the Makam Ish, Makam Isha, the name of the man, name of the woman, Makam Eidim, Makam Azman. From Rabbi Yoel, Av Tzorich Sheiniach Makam Areyat Materes L'Chaladam. He also has to leave over the place of Materes L'Chaladam, because that's the ikar of the get. The ikar of the get has to be written Lashma, which means that although we allow you to write all the bells and whistles around the get, but the get itself, you can't write in bulk, so you can pull it out from your cabinet file later, from your file cabinet later to give it to a couple. That doesn't work. So what do you see from here? Rava says here you see the halacha that stama by get is possible. Okay. All right. So now we get into.
Not the tuffle of the get.
Huh?
The ikar of the get has to be the machshava.
Yeah. The ikar of the get has to be lishma. Yeah. So that was Rava's raya that a get, stam by get doesn't work. Okay. So that was Rava's shir. That night where Ravina met Rav Papa, told him, we missed you last night by the shir. And he continues, there was another part to that shir also. Su Rama Milsa Achriti. Rava also asked another stira. Okay, we're getting involved a little bit in a whole different in a whole different sugya. Yeah? Okay, so the Gemara says like this. Miyam Rav Yidam Rav. Rava said, did Rav really say, Chatas sheshchotel l'shem oila psula? Shchotel l'shem chulin ksheira? Apparently, yeah, there was a Kabbalah that Rav made this following statement. He says that if a person shechts a chatas l'shem oila, it's possible. If he shechts it l'shem chulin, it's kosher. So why? So Rav explained Rav saying, Alma, what do you see from Rav's statement? The mina machriv ba, that mina, what's mina? Mina is oila. Chatas and oila from the same min because they're both kachim. So if you confuse the mina, this min with the same min, which is hektish,
What is chulin? What is it?
that's machriv ba, that ruins the carbon. The lav mina, when it's totally not from the same parsha, it's not the same min, which means you intended to shechted l'shem chulin, which is not from the same min as chatas, loy machriv ba. It's not machriv, it doesn't ruin it. Right? So again, Rav is saying from Rav you see a concept, you see a klal. When Rav says chatas yishach l'shem oila is pasul, chatas yishach l'shem chulin is kosher, you see from here that it's worse when you're dealing with mina. When you use mina, the min, meaning hektish itself, then that could ruin the carbon. Chatas and oila is hektish. You want to ruin the chatas with oila, which is mina, because they're both hektish. But lav mina loy machriv ba. If you do it with chulin, it's not machriv, it's kosher. Contradictions. You're going back for yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Okay. Here's not get anymore. This is karbonas. Oh, now he's going to the get. You're right. I'm sorry. Mini. Kollegas l'shem isha. Pasal la filo shem vedes kechavim nami pasal. So you see from what? Even though it's not mina, it's also machriv. Yeah. But Nachri is not mina, so you're writing it for something that's completely not mina. Why should it passel?
Even so,
it passels. So how could Rav say? So how could Rav say that chatas l'shem chulin is ksheira? Chatas l'shem chulin is not mina b'chlal of chatas, and yet it's kosher. A goy is not mina of a bas Yisrael, and still it's passel. That's the stira. Miget? ששמה יש גם כן הלוכה של לשמו.
לשמה וגם לא מינה.
כן, שמה יש גם כן הלוכה של לשמו, וכוסף לא לשמו. So just like by Zvachim, we'll see soon, we'll see in Daf Daled, the Gemara is going to give us Mekayros for לשמו, but יש פסוק בתורה שצריכים לשמו בזבחים, יש פסוק בתורה שצריכים לשמו בגט. אז צריכים לעיין בשתי הפרשיות, והם צריכים להיות שווים בדיניהם. אז שואלים עכשיו, לכאורה, הם לא שווים בדיניהם. בקורבן, you see that לאו מינו לא ימחרב בה. בגט, you see, לאו מינו, בגוי, if you write it לשם גוי, it's מחרב, it's possible. So the Gemara Vishani, Ravos Mataritz, get dalaboidis kcheva minei havale stama apostle. A get, if you remove the evedis kechavim, then you remain with stama and stama's apostle. Kachem dal chulam minei havale stama ksherim, which means that you're right. The evedis kechavim is loy malav loy moirid, right? But still, even if you remove the evedis kechavim, that lav mina, you're left with stama, and stama is apostle by a get. But by kachem, if you remove the chulin, right? In other words, the lav mina is removable. Just remove it. What are you left with? So by get, if you remove the lav mina, the vedas kechavim, you're left with stama and stama's puzzle. And by kachem, if you remove the chulin, right? Then you're left with stama, and stama by kachem, we just said is kosher. So now we go to, now we have to follow along over here, because here we're getting into taharis. Gewalt. V'roma milsa achriti. Yeah, you didn't like get, now he's going to compare it to taharis. Okay.
So התירוץ של רבא,
Yeah.
הוא זה, דל עובד כוכבים מיני, ואבא לסתם הפסוק. זה מה ש... בתירוץ, וכאן תסתכל בהערה של 15.
כן.
תסתכל, מדברי רבא משמע שחטאת שהם חולים כשרה לגמרי, ועלתה לבעלים לשם חובה, שהרי דינה כדין חטאת ששחטה סתמה, שהיא כשרה לגמרי. איך כתב הרמב"ן במלחמות במסכת ראש השנה, אולם הגמרא לקמן אמר רבי שלא עלתה חטאת זו לבעלים לשם חובה, אלא אמר רב, אלא שהיא כשרה. אינם סור לגמרי חטאת שחטא לשם עולה, וכן בסקר אמר לך, יש מבארים.
Okay, you're getting involved in a whole... Okay, we got to get weiter. This is a whole Gemara later.
בסוף הוא כותב ככה, בסוף הוא כותב, אבל סוף סוף, הרי זו מחשבת שלא לשמה. After all the מהלך היא זו לשמה, ולכן לא עלה קורבן הבעלים לשם חובה.
Okay. Okay, Shulam Rechavia, we're up to Tav Gimel Amid Aleph.
Okay, thank you. Delay a little bit.
אחרי הכל, חזרנו בחזרה, שזה, עכשיו הוא אומר שזה פסול, זה לא כשזה כשר. נכון?
Right.
נכון?
By where? By get? By get it's possible, because if you remove a goy, you still have stomach is possible.
לא, מחשבת חולין פוסלת.
No, Shevas Chulin is Ksheira.
סליחה, אין מחשבת חולין פוסלת.
Yeah.
ובגט כן.
You can't posel it. Lama? Dal goy, you're left with stomach. Stomach is possible by a get. Dal Chulin, you're left with stomach. Stomach is kosher by Zvachim. Okay, weiter. V'Rava Milsa Achriti. Rava asks another contradiction on that member of Rav, right? He's going really on that member of Rav. Again, what did Rav say? Chatas l'shem oil is pasul, chatas l'shem chulin is kosher.
What's the first one on the line? This is Daf Gimel Amud Beis.
Yehuda, Amud Aleph.
Okay.
Okay, so the Gemara says, Rava Milsa Achriti. Mi omer Rav Yudah Marav, chatas shechat l'shem oil psula, shechat l'shem chulin ksheiro. Almad the mina machriv ba, the lo mina le machriv ba, right? It's worse if you change the kavana for another min, which is hektish, than to change the kavana to something which is completely lav mina, which is chulin. That doesn't ruin it. So it sounds like mina is worse, lav mina is not worse. I guess it's like we learned min b'minoi is worse, right? Loy batal, right? It ruins it. And Mishaloi b'minoi, it's batal b'nais and tam. So a very similar concept, really. The mina machriv, it's mamish machriv, it ruins it. Loi mina loi machriv ba. So is that really true? Vatanya, we learned, toichoi v'loi toich toichoi. Gavaldig. Here we go. Let's just talk it out very quickly. So here you have, let's say you have a kli cheres, you have a tanash of cheres. This is a sheretz. Okay, it's perfect. This is sheretz. Sheretz falls in here. And this is a kli shetef, which means it's made out of evan or eitz, stone or wood.
So that's not matam.
And it's hanging into the ear space of the kli cheres. In the kli cheres, there's a mouse. Don't forget sheretz, yeah?
Right.
So it's hanging into the ear space. And I have mashkin or oichlin inside this cup.
A little less now.
Yes. So now the question is, we know the avir of a kli cheres is matama.
Yes.
Whatever is hanging in its ear space is matama. Now,
but Evan or eights is
now,
not, right?
Now, one second. Slow down. So here we have a pasuk that says, toichoi, whatever is in the ear space is matama. But not loy toich toichoi. But if I have mashke inside another kli, which is in the ear space of the cheres, that does not become tame. So toichoi, whatever goes directly into the ear space of the cheres is tame. Loy toich toichoi. If you have a keli which hangs in the ear space of the cheres, and there is a toich toichoi, which means that now I have food inside the even or the eitz, the keli kli shetef it's called. Why is it called kli shetef, by the way? Because even or eitz, you can dip in the mikveh to be matar. Shetef means shtifa. You can wash it out. That's why it's called kli shetef. Yeah. So kli shetef is mat. Of course, it becomes tamei. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But it protects. Its matzil protects whatever is inside.
Yeah.
Because the aver of the kli cheres cannot penetrate. Okay, that's what this means. This is a brisa. we're talking about the Shmoyne Shrotzim that are Matame in the Avir of El Klicheres. So Toicha, it's only inside of the Avir, directly inside the Avir. V'loi Toich Toicha, if I have something inside another Keli, which is inside the Avir. I feel a Klishet of Matzil. Okay. Says the Gemara, this is a Brisa. Right? This Brisa, L'chayra, is a stira on Rav. Why is it a stira on Rav? Because this is a Keli, right? And this is a Keli. So what would you call it? Min b'minoi. They're both the same min. Although this is Evan or Eitz and this is Cheres.
Right,
Doesn't matter, of course, but that's Chatas and that's Oilo. But they're both Hektish. So in other words, they're both Kalim. That's the headline. The headline is they're both Kalim. And what do you see? That this Keli is machriv the airspace of the Klicheres, of the Avar of the Klicheres. What does it mean machriv? It means it's mafsiket. It doesn't allow it. It blocks it, which means machriv. So we just explained in Rav that if it's mina, if it's mina, it's mina is machriv, and over here you see. Here you see it's lav mina and it is also machriv. So I made a mistake. It's lav mina because this is cheres and this is eitz and evan.
Right.
My apologies.
Yeah.
So I made a mistake. So this is lav mina, and still it's machriv the airspace. It's not like Rav, because Rav said if it's lav mina, it's not machriv, right? If it's chatas l'shem chulin, which is lav mina, carbon is still kosher. So it's a stira on Rav. That was Rav's kasha on Rav's maimra. Rav says that chatas l'shem chulin is kosher because it's lav mina, and when it's lav mina, einoi machriv. Here you have lav mina of cheres and an eitz ve'evan inside, and it is machriv. It's blocking the airspace. It's machriv the avir of the klicheres. That was the kasha that he asked. Vishani and Rava answered like this: Asu chulin etzel kachin kemechitza etzel taner. Ma mechitza etzel taner lemahanya laklal av chulin etzel kachin lemahanya laklal. So here's where we say, here's what I said earlier is true in the Gemara Steretz. I jumped the gun. Gemara Steretz says, really, no. This is min b'minoi, because they're both kalim. You're trying to make it lav mina, because this is cheres and this is eitz v'evan, and eskakash on Rav. Yeah. This is min b'minoi. Right? Because although this is cheres and this is eitz v'evan, but they both have a shem kli. Just like chatas and oilo, they both have a shem carbon, right? That's why we consider it min b'minoi.
How do you determine something? What's the definition?
Definition of what? How do you classify a kli evan and a kli cheres?
Right.
Gemara's answer is you classify it min b'minoi because they're both kalim. Because they're both under this.
Because
they're both kalim. So min b'minoi, Rav says is machriv. That's why it could ruin the airspace. But mechitza is lav mina. Why? Because the tanner is a keli. Mechitza is a divider. Mm-hmm. So there it's lav mina. So that would be similar, parallel to chulin and chatas. That's the Gemara's answer. Vishani asu chulin etzel kachim kemechitza etzel tanur. You can't compare chulin with kachim to kli evan to a kli cheres. You want to compare it to mechitza with tanur because that is just a divider against the keli. So ma mechitza etzel tanur lemahanya laklal, av chulin etzel kachim lemahanya laklal. So that was the teretz. Oh, so Rav is mamshech and it says, I'll bring you a raya that mechitza etzel tanur doesn't help. How do I know this? Which means what, by the way? Which means, oh, this is perfect. I have all the gadgets I need. So this is the mechitza. So if I put this in, right, and I create a divide in the airspace of the klicheres, and on the one side I have a mouse, and the other side I have oichlin, says Rava, then this is not going to be machriv of the airspace, which means, right, it's not going to be machriv of the airspace because this is lav mina. This is not a keli. This is a keli.
The mechitza has to
go
all the way to the bottom.
It's going to go all the way to the bottom.
Okay.
But it's not going to separate the airspace. It's not going to be machriv of the airspace. You know why?
The entire airspace is...
Because it's lav mina. Lav mina ain't a machriv.
Yeah.
Lav mina ain't a machriv. It's like...
Isn't the fact the entire airspace itself, it's tamei?
Yes. Exactly. The entire airspace is tummy, right? But let's say you put a divider and then you put food inside.
Okay, so after you.
Yeah.
So then-
Could this protect the food? Answer is no, because this is lav mina. This is a keli. This is a divider. So mamela, it can't be machriv the airspace. It doesn't separate. It doesn't create an actual divide.
It has to be the same material.
Only min b'mino is machriv, right? So when it's a keli and a keli, even though this is eitz ve'evan and this is cheres, no problem. It's min b'mino because they're both kelim. That's where we say it's machriv and it protects the oichel inside this top keli. But if it's a mechitza inside, that's einay mino. This is not a keli bachlal. So you're trying to ruin, be machriv the airspace, i.e. being dividing the airspace. That's not going to happen. That can't happen. And he brings a raya that a Mishnah in Caleb. Tanner shechatzotze ben nesarim b'yiriyos. What if you take an oven, you divide it with nesarim, with wood, or yiriyos with cloth, v'nimtza sheretz b'makam echad, and you have a sheretz on one side of the tanner, and I guess you have food on the other. Hakoil tamei. The ganze airspace is tamei. Yeah, the mechitza is not matzel. It's not machriv. It can't divide the sheretz from the oichlin. And the same is true if you put a kaveres, you put a beehive, right? And the kaveres had a hole in it, through and through. She pchusa.
What do you mean, through one side to the other?
Yeah. She pchusa upekuka bakash, and then you try to stuff up that hole with some straw, yeah, to make sure that there's no nekev, there are no holes. So now you can't call it a keli anymore. Why not? Because it has holes in it. Once it has holes, the beehive is not considered a keli, even though you try to stuff it up with kash. So literally it has a din of mechitza. It's just another case of mechitza. You have nesarim, you have urias, you have kaveras with holes. Umushul sheles lavira tanner. And it's hung in the airspace of the tanner. Yes, sheretz b'toicha. If you have a sheretz inside the kaveras, hataner tamei. The tanner is tamei. And if it's sheretz b'tanner, oichlin sheb'toicha tamein. The oichlin inside the kaveris is tamei. Why? Because that's not a keli. Once it's not a keli, it's just a mechitza. And if it's a mechitza, it's min be'enoi minoi. Min be'enoi minoi isn't machriv. It doesn't serve as divider, which is a raya to what Rava is saying. Rava is saying that mechitza by a tanor does not serve as a divider, and therefore chulin and kachim is really similar to mechitza and tanner. Both are min be'enoi minoi, and that's why in both cases it's not machriv. It doesn't have enough fortitude, enough strength to ruin the airspace, or by kachim to ruin the chatas, to ruin the carbon.
So both of them are good.
Both of them are good. Well, depends which context. By
Yeah.
a tanner, it's tamei, and we're talking
The
about
tanner
kavanas.
itself is, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Gemara asks, the Mishnah over there is Rabbi Eliezer Matar. Rabbi Eliezer's choilik, and he says, no, even a mechitza could be machriv and could be choitzitz b'fnei atoma. Right? Even a mechitza could be choitzitz b'fnei atoma. Why? Rabbi Eliezer is a kavachomer. Rabbi Eliezer is a kavachomer. In metzila b'meis hachamur, if you have a mechitza and an oil, and on one side of the mechitza there's a mace. A mace is the most chomer de getuma there is.
Yeah.
And on the other side of the mechitza you have kalim. Yeah? So the mechitza is matzel the kalim from becoming tamei to mas oil. So he says, Rabbi Eliezer says, 1 second. In metzila b'meis hachamur, if you see that a mechitza can be matzel by tumas mace, which is more chamer, because a mace is matama odam, begodim, kalim, oichlim, mashkim, matama, all kinds of stuff.
Cool.
Right? Akol. Loy tatzel b'klicheres akal. Klicheres akal, the aver klicheres is only matama oichlim and mashkim. So it's much more kal. So avada, mechitza should be able to be matzel, the aver of a klicheres. Amru loy, so Chav said, nisht, you don't have a good kavachomer, we have a pircha. Loy. In metzila b'meis chamur shekein cholkin oyalin, because that's the derech of people. They divide airspace in their homes, in their rooms, like we have over here with a mechitza.
Right.
That's the derech b'nei Adam, and therefore it's considered a strong enough mechitza to separate tumah, because that is a divider that people use. That's derech b'nei Adam. But b'klicheres hakal she'ein cholkin b'klicheres. But when you have a keli, when was the last time you saw somebody have a keli with a mechitza inside it? Never. So therefore, a mechitza is not strong enough. That's the pirch on the kavachayim.
Thermos.
A thermos.
Thermos, right, yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, very good. Good.
Thermos, they don't
Excellent.
have right in the middle.
למה? זה אוויר, יש אוויר בפנים.
No, it's like there's air around it. There's a flask in the center and air around it, and then the outer skin or the outer.
Usually by the China.
Today there are,
the hot pot.
today there's a lot of pots that are two together.
Yes.
Steaming.
Perfect for chilling.
For steaming.
Yeah.
But they're two separate pots,
yeah.
no? Aren't they two separate? They're two separate kalim. You could take out each one separately, you know? Right. So no, but we're talking about.
It's attachment to mechitza. It's like a mechitza.
We're talking about one keli with a mechitza.
But what's the requirement?
It's
of a
one keli, but a mechitza in the middle. Yeah, you ever saw that?
What's the
Is that
requirement?
the thermos that you're talking about? I think
What's
the
the
thermos is.
You know that when they make cholent, sometimes they have these bags.
Yeah.
They put in eggs or they put something.
Yeah.
It's a special delicacy.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that would be the same partial, but
Not sure. Yeah.
it is a bag.
How do you define what's the definition of a kosher mechitza?
By a mess to separate a room.
This is good. This is good, or this is not good.
I meaning for a mace, you mean to separate for a mace?
No good. Right?
I'll be honest. I don't know what the requirement says. It's to be. I'm not sure. Okay, we have to learn.
Yeah.
You got to get there in Shas. Okay. So basically, okay, let's see if we can finish the Yom Chaver. We have only 15 minutes. Okay, let's see. It's a little bit of a mesubachto, yeah. So the Gemara just said that Rava answered Rav by saying that when you shech the chatas l'shem chulin, that's more similar to having a mechitza in a tanner, because the chatas and chulin are not mina. And that's why it's not machrav, it doesn't ruin it. So too, when you have a mechitza in a tanner, mechitza is lav mina because it's not a keli, tanner is a keli. So that's why the mechitza doesn't ruin the ear space of the tanner.
Because these are two entirely separate.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
So the Gemara says that's a very nice teretz to Rav if you hold like the Rabbanan, because the Rabbanan are of the opinion that a mechitza doesn't ruin the ear space, right? It doesn't serve as a divider. But the Rabbi Eliezer, but we just said according to Rabbi Eliezer, it is chaytzitz. So according to Rabbi Eliezer, it's chaytzitz. Why is it chaytzitz? Because obviously it's lav mina. Obviously lav mina because it's not a keli, and still it's chaytzitz. So you see that even where it's lav mina, it's machriv. That would be a kash on Rav. Rav says when it's not mina, chatas and chulin, it's not machriv, it's still kosher. And here you see in Rabbi Eliezer, right, in Shitas Rabbi Eliezer, that a mechitza that's in a keli and a tanner of a cheres, it's lav mina, and it is machriv, it is divide. It does separate and ruin the airspace and create a divide. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Eliezer kavachomer kamar. No, Rabbi Eliezer has a kavachomer here. The reason is not because lav mina is machriv. It's not that he argues on Rav in our case of chatas l'shem chulin. It's only over there because he has a kavachomer from Tumas Meis. So the Gemara says, Yachi, hasam nami lema kavachomer. What do you mean? Once you begin with kavachomers, in Rav's halacha of chatas l'shem chulin, they also have a kavachomer and tell you that it should be machriv, it should ruin the carbon. What would be the kavachomer there? Kachim mechal and kachim. When you shech the carbon l'shem another carbon, which is kachim, is mechalal kachim, right? And oila l'shem oila will be mechalal l'chatas, will ruin the chatas. So chulin loy kalshkin, yeah, kachim is closer to kachim, and yet it ruins it. Chulin, which is farther than kachim, then certainly it should ruin it. So that's also sort of a kal v'chaymer. So if you're telling me should ruin the carbon,
okay,
yeah. So chulin chulin, if you have a chatas, should ruin the carbon,
yeah,
right? And a thought should ruin the carbon. So once you are resorting to kal v'chaymers, and that's why you're telling me Rabbi Eliezer holds by mechitza. Mechitza ruins the ear space of the keli, even though they're not the same. It's lav mina. So because you have a kal v'chaymer here, that's his excuse. I can use the same teretz here. I have an excuse here to passel the chatas which you're shechted l'shem chulin, even though it's lav mina, because I have a kal v'chaymer. Elo taima derav k'Rabbi Eliezer, the Amar Rabbi Lazar. The Amar Rabbi Lazar, my taima derav. Now we have a new reason for Rav. Rav says chatas yishech l'shem chulin is kosher. You know what the reason is? It's a pasuk. V'lo yechalu es katshe b'nei Yisrael es asher yirimu l'Hashem. It says lechalu es katshe b'nei Yisrael. Katshe mechal and kachim, ein chul mechal and kachim. So in other words, only if somebody thinks, Kohen thinks of an oila instead of a chatas, both are kachim, that ruins it. But if a Kohen thinks of chulin instead of the chatas, that's not kachim. Chulin is chulin. That can't ruin it, that's a pasuk. So the Gemara says, oh, Alma, osikra, apke me kal v'chomer. Since we said we have a kal v'chomer, to say that it does ruin it, you answered, no it doesn't, because I have a pasuk that says not like the kal v'chomer. So you see, Alma osikra, the pasuk of Chalalu es katshe b'nei Yisrael says don't darshan the kal v'chomer. Hachanami also by mechitza and tanner. Leisei toichai lavke mekal v'chomer. I also have a pasuk not like the kal v'chomer, right? Toichai could teach me that only something which has a toich, something which is a keli, is ruins the ear space of the tanner, but not something which doesn't have a toich, not something which is a mechitza. So once you're telling me if I have a pasuk, the pasuk takes precedence over the kal v'chomer. So over here too, let the word toichai take precedence over the kal v'chomer of Rabbi Eliezer, and Rabbi Eliezer should agree that a mechitza cannot ruin the ear space of a tanner. So the Gemara says, you have the pasuk of toichai. Rabbi Eliezer uses that toichai for a completely different drasha. Hi toichai mi boyole lo'ichlin shegiblon betit. Yeah, if you have food that you completely wrapped it up in tit. What's tit? Tit is tar or
It is plaster.
Plaster.
Right, yes.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to eat that food once you wrap it up in plaster.
No.
Okay. Clay, thank you.
No, but it's, okay, I think he's right. It's plaster. Okay, whatever.
Ve'echnison la'avir tanor. And you machnas it into the ear space of the tanor. So, kedaitech amina, I would have thought, hoyul benegia, loimatama, since if it touches the walls of the tanner, it won't become tummy. Why? Because it's covered, insulated, with clay. So, ba'aviroi, nami loimatamu. So perhaps it doesn't have a din tuma even if it hangs in the ear space. Right? The ear space will only be matama, anything that can become tameh if it touches the walls. But if it's an item that when touching the walls it won't become tameh, so perhaps the ear space also won't be matama, that item. So I would have thought that. Kamash malan, no. Even if when touching the walls it won't become tameh because it's insulated by clay, Toichoi tells you that it will become tameh from the ear space itself. So it's a unique halacha, yes. So Rabbi Eliezer says, I don't have the word available. Toicha is not available to me to darshan that mechitza is mafsik because I need the word toicha to teach me this halacha of oichel shegiblan betit. Okay, so the Gemara says, wow, what about the Rabbanan? How are they going to know the halacha that the ear space is matame by oichel that is insulated with clay? Rabbanan hanach loy tzrichi kra. This doesn't need a pasuk. They say it's a svara. Of course, it's tameh, even though it cannot become tameh if it touches the walls of the tanner because it's insulated. But the ear space, of course, itself is matame. Okay, that's
that's because of the thing itself, right?
So the mechitza is not going to save you.
What is that?
Mechitza will not save you. It's going to be still tameh.
Exactly. The mechitza is not going to save you according to the Rabbanan because they darshan toichai. It's only by keli. But mechitza is not toich toichai. Mechitza is just a divide. It's still toichai. Exactly. It's still toichai. Exactly. Now Rabbi Eliezer argues over there, and he says mechitza will divide the airspace. It will save it from a kal v'chomer. He has a kal v'chomer from tumas mace. Mechitza works by mace. That's chomer. Works by keli also. Fine. The Rabbanan say a kal v'chomer is not going. They don't hold the kal v'chomer. There's a pircha because that's the derech. This is not the derech. Yeah, no good. Okay, fine. But the Gemara asked, what about Rav? Could Rav be choylek and Rabbi Eliezer, this Tana Rabbi Eliezer? Rav says that when you have chulin, you're mechavim for chulin instead of the chatos. It's lav mina. it's still kosher. It's not machriv. And Rabbi Eliezer clearly says even mechitza, which is lav mina, is machriv. So again, Rav will still be arguing with Rabbi Eliezer. That was the Gemara's kasha now. You find the Rabbanan, according to Rabbanan, Rav is okay. But we want to make sure Rav can fit with all the Tanoim, if we can. So how could Rav argue with Rabbi Eliezer? So the Gemara, basically, the consensus is, the reason why it's not a kasha from Rabbi Eliezer is because Rabbi Eliezer has a kal v'chomer. Right? He has a kal v'chomer. Over here you also have a kal v'chomer, bechatas and chulin. Yeah, but you have a pasuk, a separate pasuk, al kein yerimu, that only kachim is mechal kachim, and not chulin. So you have a separate pasuk, and over here you don't have a pasuk, so therefore Rabbi Eliezer will agree with Rav that over here chulin is not an issue. Even though mechitza would be an issue, it's machriv, but chulin, lav min, over there is not an issue because of the pasuk of Ashirimu. Okay, that's the bottom line so far. Now, we're not done. We have another contradiction. Rav Yosef Barami Rami, Shinu Kodesh Hashinoi Bailim Meshani. What's Shinu Kodesh? Shinu Kodesh is when you shech the carbon chatas l'shem oila. That's Shinu Kodesh. You're changing the Kodesh of the animal, what the animal was hukdash for. And then you have Shinoi Bailim. Shinoi Bailim is another type of lishma that you need by karbanos, which is if I bring a carbon chatas, right, and you bring a carbon chatas, the kohen can't take my chatas and say, okay, I'll use it for a chavia.
Yeah.
That's Shinoi Bailim.
Right.
Because it's a different shogeg. It's a different avera.
It's a different kind of different kind of shaloit lishma. Now, I bring
avera acheret.
It's avera acheret. Yeah, it's a whole different din. True. No, even if you have the same avera.
No, because one of the 6
the shma you need is
L'shem
zeveach. Yeah.
Even
Correct. Sure. So even if he ate chaylev b'shoigig and he has to bring a chatas,
Thank you.
and I ate chaylev b'shoigig after bringing chatas, if the kohen takes my chatas and shechts it l'shem rechavia, it's going to be no good, right?
Yeah.
And what if I bring a chatas and an oil and the kohen shechts my chatas l'shem oil and vice versa? It's also no good. That's shinu kodesh. So the Gemara says, okay, now what's the kasha? He asks a stira between the two, and he answers it. What's the stira? Mi rav chatas l'shach l'shem chatas ksheiro l'shem oil psula. Here, Rav said another halacha. A chatas which he shechted l'shem chatas acheres. Yeah? Let's say I have to bring 2 chatos. Yoeli gold, 8 dam, and 8 chaylev, both b'shoigig. Both require a chatas. Now, when I come to the kohen takes my chatos that I brought l'shem chaylev, for the chaylev part, and he confuses it and he shechts it l'shem the dam.
So that's he's the one who messed it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he shechts it l'shem the different chatas,
Right.
which was supposed to go for dam.
Right.
Or he takes the chatas l'shem dam, and he shechts it for the different chatas l'shem chaylev, ksheira. That's not called shaloi l'shma. That's still kosher. But if I bring 2 separate behemoths as karbonos, one is an oila, one is a chatas, that's psula. If he shechts the chatas l'shem oila, that's pasul. Alma, what do you see?
Is he chayav to pay?
The lav mina. Okay, different
No,
conversation.
seriously,
I have to
pay
look
you
into.
for it.
We have to look into that.
Yeah.
Alma, you see from it the lav mina machriv ba. That when it's not the min, right? Chatas and oil are 2 different minim.
Yeah.
Is machriv, it's pasul. But the mina loy machriv ba. But when it's mina, which means it's 2 chatois, one is for chaylev, one is dam, it's not machriv, it's still kosher. So how could Rav have said that? Yeah, and that's with regard to Shina Kodesh. Rav himself said by Shinoi Bailim, Chatas sheshchata al misha mechuyev chatas psula, and al misha mechuyev oila ksheira. Oh my goodness. Alma de bar mina machriv ba de lav mina loy machriv ba. That's exactly the opposite. When it comes to Shinoi Bailim, so Rav said that if you're mechuyev an oila and I'm mechuyev a chatas, and the kohen shechts my chatas for you, who you're mechuyev an oila, then the halacha is it's kosher. But if we're both mechuyev chatois, and he shechts my chatas for you or your chatas for me, then it's pasul. So what do you see? That mina is worse, and lav mina is worse, and mina is worse, and lav mina is better. So you have a contradiction between Shinoi Kodesh and Shinoi Bailim. By Shinoi Kodesh, you see mina is loy machriv, and lav mina is machriv. And by Shinoi Bailim, you see the exact opposite. You see that mina is machriv, and lav mina is loy machriv. Okay, so that's the kasha, a mashani, and he answers, Hasam by Shinoi Kodesh, really I'll tell you that Mina is worse. Like we said up until this point. If it's Mina, it's Machriv. Loi Mina is Loi Machriv. Why by Shinoi Kodesh? Yeah, do we say that if it's Mina, it's kosher? So there is Shachat Oisa Lechatas Amar Rachmana. When you bring a Chatas, as long as you shechted L'Shem Chatas, you're good to go. So Varei Chatas L'Shem Chatas Nishchata. Yeah, it's Nishchata L'Shem Chatas. You have a Chatas, I have a Chatas. So who cares the kind is mashche is sheichet my chatas l'shem your chatas? Yeah. At the end of the day, the chatas was hukrav, was nishchat l'shem chatas, and that's what the Torah wants. That's all the Torah requires. But halcha by shinoi bailim, it says v'chiper olav hakoyin ksiv, olav v'loyal chaveiroi. Right? It has to be olav v'loyal chaveiroi dum yedidei shemechuyev kapara kamoisai. When is olav lel chaveira, which means chaveira dum yedidei, when his chaver is like him, which means his chaver is mechuyev the same carbon as him, and he shechts it for his chaver, that's when it's possible. So basically, what the Gemara is saying is we have psukim for both halachas. It's not a stira because it's gzeres hakasav, right? The easiest teretz is when you have a stira, you have a contradiction. Yeah, here you see min b'minoi is machrev, here you see min b'minoi is not machrev. So how are you going to answer it? You say svaras, then it gets musubach sometimes. If you say it's gzeres hakasav, shinoi kodesh, it doesn't matter. Min b'minoi is not a problem because it says v'shachat oisa lechatas. As long as you have a chatas, doesn't have to mean this chatas or that chatas. As long as it's a chatas, it's fine. That's why min b'minoi over there is kosher. But when dealing with two different people, although they're bringing the same carbon, and you shecht it for the wrong person, it says v'chiper olav. There the Torah is makbid. It has to be for that particular bailam. Yeah, and it even makes sense. I mean, you could say some svara. You could say because the person needs a kapara, so the kohen at least has to be mechaven for the right person. Right. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, this person needs a kapara. So if he's mechaven for a different person, he never got the kapara. Yeah, so that's why when you're talking about l'shem bailam, there's no room for mistakes over there. L'shem bailam, yeah, if he doesn't bring it for the bailam himself, then it doesn't work. It has to be olav. Okay, Rav Chaviva Rami. Prima asked Extiro, Shina bailam atech toicha meshani. Miyam Rav Chatas shachta mishchayim. We have a yeah. Miyam Rav Chatas shachta mishmechuyev chatas psula mishmechuyev el ksheira. Did Rav really say that a chatas that you shecht for someone who's mechuyev chatas is psula? Al mishmechuyev el ksheira alma demina machrev ba to lab mina loy machrev ba. Vatanya toicha veloy toich toicha afilu klishet of matzil. So what do you see? That mina is machriv. Yeah. So what's the kasha? What's the kasha? What's lav minoi? Oh, so you see that even minoi is machriv. I mean, isn't that what he said? Why is it a kasha? Because klishetev is lav mina. He's assuming klishetev is lav mina. Like we said earlier, he's not holding it's mina. Okay. Keli, but the keli here is lav mina because it's made out of Evan or okay. So that's the shayla how to view it. But this he's viewing Rav Chaviva is asking because he's seeing it as lav mina and yet it's machriv. And Rav said not like that. Mashani arba. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Only Mina's machriv, that's what he said, and over here it's lav Mina. A Meshani arba toich ksivi, it says toichai 4 times. It says really twice, but with the extra vav it's 4. It's like kol akol. Yeah, toichai. So Gemara says we have these lemudim. Toich, toichai, chad lekofei, chad lekzeir shava, chad teich shazev teich lechacha, hidach, toichai, v'loich toich, afilu klishetev matzel. So basically, I just went through it very quickly, but we have exeris hakosov there. The toicha v'loy toich toicha is exeris hakasav that in such a case min shaloi b'mina will be machriv there. Okay, I'll stop over here.